It's January 2003 and President Bush is making his State of the Union address. It's one of the most important speeches he makes each year, and he's using it to again build the case for invading Iraq.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
And it was this claim that Saddam was trying to build a nuclear bomb from African uranium that was central to the case for war.
We will confront them with focus and clarity and courage.
It's since been revealed that the claim was based on documents that were crude forgeries. But the way these documents were used to construct a case for war was the start of a murky campaign to deceive the public and discredit anyone who stood in the way. The story actually starts in late 2001. For more than a year before the State of the Union speech, US intelligence agencies had been receiving and dismissing similar reports about Iraq trying to buy uranium from Niger in Central Africa. This declassified US Senate investigation details how various agencies downplayed the initial reports, including the State Department calling them highly suspect. But Vice President Dick Cheney and his staff were looking for any fragments of information to back the case for war in Iraq. He'd taken a personal interest in the Niger reports and demanded that they be re-investigated. In February 2002, Joe Wilson, a former US ambassador with contacts in the region, was sent to Niger.
Well, I went because I was asked to go by the CIA, who told me that a request had come in from the Office of the Vice President that they check out an allegation that was based on purported documents of a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of sale, it wasn't clear which, between Niger's government and the Iraqi government, covering the sale of several hundred tons of uranium yellowcake.
Ambassador Wilson reported back to the CIA that there was no evidence whatsoever of any uranium deal.
My report was one of 3 reports from the field. There was also a report from our ambassador on the ground. We have an ambassador on the ground and have had one virtually since independence. And the 3rd report was a Marine Corps 4-star general who traveled down there also to look into this allegation and came away with essentially the same conclusions that I had.
So by early 2002, the claims had been comprehensively dismissed. But still, the story would not die.
So they wanted to show that the Iraqi ambassador had gone to Niger also in 2001 in order to...
Later that year, Elisabetta Berber, an Italian journalist at Panorama magazine in Milan, received an intriguing phone call from a source, claiming he had documentary proof of the uranium purchase.
It was the beginning of October 2002, and a former source of mine called me saying that he knew which African country was giving uranium to Iraq, to Niamey, the capital of Niger. And okay, we have also here a telex and here another telex.
The source offered to sell the documents for €10,000, claiming that they came from within the Niger embassy in Rome.
I mean, potentially it was a big story, but at the same time it was a dangerous story, because what I had in my hands could have been the smoking gun that everybody was looking for. I'd like the viewers to remember that it was October 2002 and that there was this big search for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So all of a sudden the proof arrives in my hands. I mean, it was too good to be true.
But Elisabetta was sceptical of the documents and convinced her editor to send her to Niger to check the claim personally. When you went to Niger, what did you find?
Well, I didn't find anything. I mean, I added some elements to my suspicion because there were many reasons to be doubtful about this supposed traffic.
Deciding that the documents were just not plausible, Elisabetta and her editor dropped the story, but not before passing the documents on to the US Embassy in Rome.
They told me that they couldn't say neither that the documents were false nor that they were authentic.
And we will answer every danger and every enemy that threatens the American people.
Despite the doubts surrounding the documents, the claims had apparently already found a willing audience in President Bush's office.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
When you heard about the American President Bush's State of the Union address in 2003, when he was talking about uranium, what did you think when you heard that?
I jumped on my chair. I said, "Oh my God."
When it became apparent that that assertion was substantiated only by these purported documents, which later turned out to be determined by the International Atomic Energy Agency to have been forgeries, it became apparent that the U.S. government had misled the American people and the Congress of the United States, and indeed the world.
Joe Wilson was so incensed that he went public, revealing his secret mission to Niger for the CIA. He wrote an article in the New York Times highly critical of the Bush administration, accusing it of burying his report and lying about the case for war. As we will hear later, it was this article that led to his wife being disclosed as a covert CIA officer, and eventually to the scandal now engulfing Washington. But the forged documents themselves raise many intriguing questions, like who forged them and why did they receive the credibility that the State of the Union speech gave them. This is Rocco Martino, the man who tried to sell the documents to Elisabetta Berber in Rome. He's a former Italian policeman and spy and makes a living peddling information to the highest bidder across Europe. He's been on the payroll of various European spy agencies, including SISMI, the Italian Secret Service. What can you tell me about Rocco Martino?
Well, Rocco Martino has omitted many information in this story.
Did you have any suspicions about Rocco for the fact that he worked from SISMI? Did that lead you to question the documents in any way, or?
You mean at the moment when I received the documents? Well, I knew that he had worked for it, but it was such a long story, and that at the moment I didn't. I had a general suspicion in the story, but I didn't put the two things together.
Several weeks ago, the Italian newspaper La Repubblica did put two and two together, claiming that SISMI had played a crucial role in the dissemination of Rocco Martino's documents.
Happy holidays.
They claimed that SISMI had been ordered by Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi to help the White House back the case for war in Iraq, and that the head of SISMI, Niccolo Polari, had opened up a secret channel of communications direct to the pro-war neoconservatives in Washington. A spokesman for US National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley confirmed that he had met with the SISMI chief in September 2002, but he denied that uranium from Niger had been discussed. It was Hadley who would later accept responsibility for adding the reference to uranium from Africa to President Bush's State of the Union address. The Italian government has denied that its Secret Service is in any way involved with the forged Niger documents, and the head of SISMI is due to testify tomorrow to the Italian Parliament about his role.
Certainly there's been a lot of speculation that the original genesis of the documents is the Italian Secret Service, that they've been willed into creation by SISMI, by the Italian Secret Service.
And the question that one would ask is, what do they stand to gain by it? What would their motive be in doing it, unless they were doing it on behalf of somebody else who did in fact have a motive?
And do you think that's somebody else?
Looking at this, who really had a motive in seeing that the United States went to war with Iraq? Well, you can name a half a dozen potential suspects, beginning with the neoconservatives here in the United States. They were clearly the biggest cheerleaders for this war.
The suggestion that the neoconservatives in the administration were involved in forging documents to prosecute a case for war is clearly explosive. Although there's no concrete evidence, in a radio interview earlier this year, former head of counter-terrorism for the CIA, Vincent Canestraro, supported an American origin for the forgeries.
The Italian intelligence service, the military intelligence service, was acquiring information that was really being hand-fed to them by very dubious sources. The Niger documents, for example, which apparently were produced in the United States, but yet were funneled through the Italians.
What do you think the ramifications would be if it was demonstrated that there were American fingerprints on these documents?
Well, I don't know, but I believe that there probably are federal statutes that would make it a federal crime to mislead the U.S. government into war. I would certainly hope so.